A very good morning, dear students. Hope you all are very fine and are enjoying our lessons together. I had discussed some topics with you in previous class. So now continue our discussion on the resources and development chapter number 1 geography. This is part 2. We will discuss about the classification of resources. Today, I will tell you how many types of resources and what are the needed of resources. Now, students, in this flowchart, you are seeing that there are two type of resources. First is natural resource and second one is human resource. Natural resources we can divide in two parts, renewable resources and non-renewable resources. Renewable resources we can divide in two parts, continuous or flow resources, and second one is biological resources. Non-renewable resources, recyclable resources and non-recyclable resources. In biological resources, we can divide it in two parts, natural vegetation and wildlife. In human resources, we will divide in two parts, structures and institutions, and second one is quantity and quality. All these are classified resources, but in 10th class, we will talk about the resources classification on the basis of origin, exhaustibility, on the basis of ownership, and on the basis of state of development. First of all, we will start with on the basis of origin. In the basis of origin, we can divide it in two parts. First one is the biotic and second one is the abiotic. What do you mean by biotic resources? Biotic resources are obtained from the biosphere. Biosphere means living and organic material such as forest, animal, birds, fish and materials that can be obtained from them. If we are talking about the flora, fauna, human beings, all these are renewable biotic resources. So students, we can say fossil fuels such as coal and petrol are also included in this category because they are formed from decayed organic matter. So we can say these all the example of biotic resources. क्या होंगे biotic resources? वही तो होंगे जो हमें बायोस्फीयर से मिल रहे हैं, चाहे वो ह्यूमन बींग के थ्रू मिल रहे हैं, चाहे वो फ्लोरा के थ्रू मिल रहे हैं, चाहे फोना के थ्रू मिल रहे हैं. These all will be come in the biotic resources. Second one, abiotic resources. Abiotic resources are those that come from non-living thing, non-organic material. For example, abiotic resources include land, fresh water, air, rocks, metals. All these will become in abiotic resources. Student, this is classification on the basis of origin. Now, we will come on the basis of exhaustibility. In this category, we will divide resources in two parts. First one is renewable resources and second one is non-renewable resources. First, we will talk about renewable resources. Renewable resources are those sources which may be obtained continuously year after year for the satisfaction of human needs, such as land, water and plants. In renewable resources, we don't exhaust. They have the capacity to regenerate themselves. Water, agriculture, fish, trees are some examples of replenishable resources. तो all these resources are renewable resources, चाहे आपके solar energy हो, चाहे air हो, water हो, soil हो, forest हो, all these will become in the renewable resources. Students, now we will talk about non-renewable resources. Non-renewable resources, those resources that cannot be replaced by any physical, mechanical and chemical process. They take millions of years to form and they occur over a long geological time. It is divided into recyclable and non-recyclable resources. For example, metal and fossil fuels. All are example of non-renewable resources. However, metals are recyclable, but fossil fuel is non-recyclable. So all these will become in the non-renewable resources. Now students, we will talk about third category, that is on the basis of ownership. On the basis of ownership, we can divide it in four parts. First is individual resources, second one is community owned resources, third one is national resources, and fourth one is international resources. Now, first of all, we will talk about individual resources. What do you mean by individual resources? Individual resources are also owned privately by individuals. Many farmers own land which is allotted to them by government against the payment of revenue. In villages, there are people with land ownership, but there are many who are landless. Urban people, they own their plots. You also, I am talking about you. आपका घर, आपकी car, आपकी books, all these will be coming individual resources. Ponds, water in wells are the examples of the individual resources. Second one, community owned resources. There are resources which are accessible to all the members of the community. In this, we can say all the members of community own resources. For example, public park, picnic spots, playgrounds, and burial grounds, village pond, all these will become in the community owned resources. Now students, we will come on third point, that is national resources. National resources are technically all the resources belong to the nation. The country has legal power to acquire even private property for public good. You might have seen roads, canals, railways being constructed on field owned by some individuals. Urban development authorities get empowered by the government to acquire land within the political boundaries and oceanic area up to 12 nautical miles from the coast termed as territorial water and resources therein belong to the nation. For examples, all minerals resources, water, land, forest and wildlife, all these will become in the national resources. नेशनल रिसोर्सेज जो हैं मोस्टली उसमें हम जितने भी आपके मिनरल्स हैं, जितने भी आपके वाटर है, जितने भी आपके लैंड है, फॉरेस्ट है, वाइल्ड लाइफ है, जो पूरे नेशंस के लिए क्या है बहुत ज़रूरी हैं, जिसमें पूरे नेशंस उन रिसोर्सेज को क्या कर रहे हैं यूज़ कर रहे हैं, दैट विल बी कम इन द नेशनल रिसोर्सेज. नाउ स्टूडेंट्स, वी आर come on the next topic, that is international resources. In these resources, there are international institutions which regulate some resources. The For example, the oceanic resources beyond 200 nautical miles of the exclusive economic zone belong to open ocean, and no individual country can utilize these without the concurrence of international institution. For example, area beyond the exclusive economic zone belong to be open ocean, and no individual country can utilize the area without the permission of international institution, international law. That will become in the international resources. India has got right to mine manganese nodules from the bed of the Indian Ocean, from that area which lies beyond the exclusive economic zone. That will become in the international resource. Next and last classification, that classification is on the basis of development. This category we will also divide it 4 parts. First is potential resource, second is developed resource, third one is stock resource, and fourth one is reserve resource. Now, first of all, we will talk about the potential resources. Potential resources which are found in region but have not been utilized due to lack of capital, technology, skill, etc. That will become in potential resources. Example, we can take the example of Rajasthan and Gujarat. Rajasthan and Gujarat have enormous potential for the development of wind and solar energy. But so far, these have not been developed properly. Now, second one is developed resources. Developed resources which are surveyed and their quality and quantity have been determined for utilization. The development of resources depend on technology and level of their feasibility. For example, coal resources of India, it will become in the developed resources. Third one is stock resource. It is also an important resource. In this resource, materials in the environment which have the potential to satisfy human needs, but human beings don't have appropriate technology to assess these, are included among stock. पोटेंशियल तो है हमारे पास, पर हमारे पास अप्रोप्रिएट टेक्नोलॉजी नहीं है, सो इट विल बी कम इन द स्टॉक रिसोर्सेज. फॉर एग्जाम्पल, वाटर. Water, I mean to say H2O. Water is a compound of 2 gases. Fine. But we don't have the technology to trap the energy of hydrogen and oxygen. Fine. So, it can be considered as stock resources. Fourth one, we will come on fourth one point, that is reserve resources. In these resources, we will talk about the subset of the stock which can be put into use with the help of existing technical know-how, but their use has been started. These can be used for meeting future requirement. River water can be used for generating hydroelectric power, but presently it is being utilized only to a limited extent. So students, we can say this, it will become in the reserve resources. For example, the water in the dams, your forest, all these is a reserve which can be used in the future. So students, I think you understand how the classification of the resources. Resources का classification हमने 4 forms में किया, 4 types में किया. First we talked about on the basis of origin, second one on the basis of exhaustibility, then ownership and last one is on the basis of state of development. Fine. Now students, we will come on next topic. The topic is, what do you mean by sustainable development? First of all, I want to tell you about the sustainable development. What do you mean by sustainable development? होता क्या है sustainable development? Sustainable economic development means development should take place without damaging the environment, and development in the present should not compromise with the needs of the future generation. इकोनॉमिक सस्टेनेबल डेवलपमेंट क्या है? इकोनॉमिक डेवलपमेंट, ऐसा इकोनॉमिक डेवलपमेंट विच डज नॉट डैमेज द एनवायरनमेंट, जो अपने एनवायरनमेंट को खराब नहीं करता, एट द सेम टाइम टेक केयर ऑफ नीड्स ऑफ द फ्यूचर जनरेशन, दैट नोन इज सस्टेनेबल डेवलपमेंट. Here is a picture. Here is the sustainable development picture. Is society, economy, environment. All these will become in the sustainable development. इसके अंदर आप लोगों को environment को सेव भी करना है, डैमेज होने से भी बचाना है, और साथ साथ में फ्यूचर जनरेशन के लिए इसको संभाल कर भी रखना है. तो that will become in the sustainable development. Fine. Now students, we will come on the next topic, that is resource planning. Students, first of all, I want to tell you about the problems created by the indiscriminate use of resource by man. What problems created by indiscrimination use of resources by man? हमें ये टॉपिक समझना बहुत ज़्यादा ज़रूरी है, क्योंकि हमें ये चीज़ पता होनी चाहिए कि किस तरीके से हमारे यहाँ पर रिसोर्सेज का जो यूज़ है वो इनडिस्क्रिमिनेट हो रहा है, और उसकी वजह से बहुत सारी प्रॉब्लम्स हमारे सामने क्रिएट हो रही हैं. डिस्क्रिमिनेशन का मतलब जो आपके रिसोर्सेज हैं उनका जो यूज़ है, रिसोर्सेज जो हैं उनका जो यूज़ है वो ओवर यूटिलाइजेशन हो रहा है. यानी इट्स अ ओवर यूटिलाइजेशन ऑफ रिसोर्सेज हैज़ लेड टू बी मैनी प्रॉब्लम्स. फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल, आई वॉन्ट टू टेल यू अबाउट द फर्स्ट प्रॉब्लम, दैट इज depletion of resources. First of all, I want to tell you about the depletion of resources. In this point, overutilization has led to be depletion of resources for meeting the greed of few individual. कुछ पर्टिकुलर हमारी जो ग्रीड्स हैं, हमारे जो लालच है, उसकी वजह से रिसोर्सेज का जो यूटिलाइजेशन है वो बहुत ज़्यादा होने की वजह से रिसोर्सेज धीरे धीरे क्या हो रहे हैं, डिप्लीट होते जा रहे हैं, कम होते जा रहे हैं. That is first reason for the utilization of resources that create many problems. Second one is concentration of resources. In this point, we can say that it's divided the society in two parts, haves or haves not, यानी rich and poor. यहाँ पर जो लोग हैं, जो सोसाइटी है, उसको दो पार्ट्स में डिवाइड कर दिया गया है. वो लोग जो रिच हैं और जो रिच पीपल हैं वो रिसोर्सेज का बहुत अच्छे से क्या कर रहे हैं, यूज़ कर रहे हैं. बट पुअर पीपल्स, उनके पास रिसोर्सेज पूरी तरह से क्या नहीं हो रहे, अवेलेबल नहीं होते. थर्ड एंड मोस्ट इम्पॉर्टेंट पॉइंट इज ग्लोबल इकोलॉजिकल क्राइसिस. In this point, we will discuss about a global ecological crisis, that's a global warming, depletion of ozone layer, pollution, land degradation. All these will become in this point. So, the overutilization of the resources has also led to be create many problems. So now students, we will talk about resource planning. इतना ज़्यादा रिसोर्सेज का जो मिसयूज़ हो रहा है, इतना ज़्यादा जो ओवर यूटिलाइजेशन हो रहा है, उसकी वजह से जो प्रॉब्लम्स क्रिएट हुई हैं उसको कंट्रोल करने के लिए हम लोग रिसोर्स प्लानिंग की बात करेंगे. क्या होता है रिसोर्स प्लानिंग? हम किस तरीके से रिसोर्स प्लानिंग करके हमारे रिसोर्सेज को क्या कर सकते हैं, सेव कर सकते हैं. तो in this topic we will talk about the resource planning and is a technique or a skill of proper utilization of resources. So now we will come on the next topic, that is resource planning. Resource planning, what do you mean by resource planning? क्या होती है resource planning? Resource planning, it is a technique, it is a technique or skill or judicious use of resources. ये क्या है? एक तरह की टेक्निक है, एक तरह की स्किल है जिसके थ्रू हम रिसोर्सेज को क्या करते हैं? जुडिशियस यूज करते हैं. दैट इज नोन एज रिसोर्स प्लानिंग. फाइन. हियर आई वांट टू टेल यू अबाउट द stages of resource planning. There are some stages of resource planning which involve the process how in India its resource planning is doing work. We can divide it into 3 parts. First one is identification. In this resource planning, this is a complex process. In this we will talk about the identification and inventions of resources. In this we will include surveying, mapping, qualitative and quantitative estimation and measurement of resources. In this we involve surveying. हम सर्वेइंग करते हैं, मैपिंग करते हैं. इसके अलावा हम एस्टिमेट लगाते हैं कि कैसी क्वालिटी है और कैसी क्वांटिटी है. इसके अलावा हम मेज़रमेंट करते हैं कि कहाँ पर कितने रिसोर्सेज हैं. फाइन. सेकेंड वन प्रोसेस, सेकेंड वन स्टेज, दैट इज evolving a planning structure and endowed with appropriate technology, skill and institutional setup of implementing resources development plan. This is second. Planning for exploitation. हम exploitation की जो प्लानिंग है उसको हम पहले से करते हैं कि किस तरीके से, किन टेक्नोलॉजी और स्किल्स के थ्रू, किन इंस्टीट्यूशनल सेटअप्स के थ्रू हम इसको डेवलप कर सकते हैं, हम क्या क्या इम्प्लीमेंटेशन कर सकते हैं, उसके बारे में हम प्लान करते हैं. नेक्स्ट, थर्ड वन इज matching the resources development plans with the national development plans. So now overall we can say these are the stages of resource planning. Now students, we will come on the importance of resource planning. Resource planning की importance क्या है? क्यों हमें resource planning की ज़रूरत है? Why is resource planning is essential for us? Fine. So first, it is necessary for the balanced development of India. Resource planning is quite necessary because of the following reason. First, we will talk about some regions of India are rich in certain resources and poor in some other resources. For example, Rajasthan is poor in water resources but rich in solar and wind energy. Now we will come on second point, why the needs of resource planning. Second one is some regions are self-sufficient while other regions are very poor in important resources. For example, Madhya Pradesh is rich in many resources but Ladakh is poor in resources. So we can say that most of the resources are unevenly distributed over the country. Fine. These are not only limited but they are also unevenly distributed over the different part of the country. Fine. Now third one is wastage of resources can be avoided by planning. हम प्लानिंग के थ्रू क्या कर सकते हैं? जो वेस्ट हो रहा है रिसोर्सेज का उसको हम क्या कर सकते हैं? उसको हम अवॉइड कर सकते हैं. नेक्स्ट वन, दैट इज द environmental pollution can be reduced. Resource planning is also necessary to save the overexploitation or unlawful exploitation. We are cutting the trees for our greedy people, for the killing of rare animals by the unscrupulous hunters, and these all are very havoc with our valuable resources. So our environment pollute and it can be reduced. Fine. Now next one, ओवर एक्सप्लॉयटेशन ऑफ रिसोर्सेज कैन बी अवॉइडेड. हमें ओवर यूटिलाइजेशन ऑफ एक्सप्लॉयटेशन जो है हमें रिसोर्सेज का, उसको क्या करना है, उसको हमें स्टॉप करना है, उसको हमें अवॉइड करना है. अंडर यूटिलाइजेशन ऑफ रिसोर्सेज will lead to be अंडर डेवलपमेंट ऑफ द इकोनॉमी. So all these points will become in the resource planning. This resource planning is very important for the development of our country, for the development of our economy. So students, today we will discuss about many things. Classification of resources on the basis of origin, on the basis of exhaustibility, ownership and development. In fact, we talked about the sustainable development and resource planning, and what are the needs of resource planning. Today we discussed all these topics. Now in next video we will talk about resources, land resource. This is a very important topic in our book, so tomorrow we will discuss this topic. Thanks students and take care. Thank you.